All right. Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to go off the rails. I'm not doing our regular share today. I came across this story. My Chavrusa Ari, he actually showed me this story, and I watched it on YouTube today. Crazy story, and I need to repeat it because there's so much in there of what we learn every single day that I feel like it's just too good to not share further. Now, there's a podcast. It's called Not Emunah. It's a Yiddish podcast and talks about just living with emunah and stuff like that. And there was a guest speaker who he repeated a story in the name of this guest speaker's name was Rabbi Chaim, and he repeated a story that happened a while back with Reb Chaim Zaid from Israel. And Reb Chaim Zaid is a very known person in the world of Kiruv. Now, Reb Chaim Zaid in this story, he's traveling from Tel Aviv and he's going to Paris. And Reb Chaim Zaid, he's there with his gabam, he's getting onto the plane, and they start boarding. And one of his gabam notices a young girl, a Jewish girl, a from girl particularly, who's standing in the corner and she's davening. And the Gabbai asks Reb Chaim Zaid, he says, what should we do? The plane is boarding already and she's standing there davening. Maybe someone should go over to her and, just let her know that the flight's boarding already. They're going to close the gate in a few minutes and, she needs to get on the flight. So Reb Chaim says, yes, go over to her. So as the Gabbai gets closer to this girl, the Reb Chaim Zaid notices that she puts a siddur over her face. She takes 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, and she starts shmoneh. She starts the Amidah. The Gabbai notices this as well. Nonetheless, he says, he tells her, listen, they're boarding the plane. You're going to miss your flight. Nothing. This girl is not moving. Goon, she's shuckling and davening. So Reb Chaim Zaid says, okay. They all get on the plane. And noticeably, this is a small flight, Israel to Europe, very small flight. There's that one seat that's empty. The stewardess call out, last call in the terminal with the name, nothing. She's not there, okay, she's not there, missing a flight. They close the door to the plane, secure it, and they back up from the gate. And as they get towards the tarmac, the flight cabin, the cockpit starts having some smoke problems going on. So immediately what happens, they shut off the engines as is protocol, and they get one of those cars or whatever to pull from the nose, pull back to the gate. So right away, Reb Chaim sees this, Reb Chaim Zaid in his gabam, they see, wow, okay. I just want to mention, this story has 4 dimensions. 4 dimensions in this story. So this is dimension number 1. Dimension number 1 is Reb Chaim Zaid sees, okay, Hashem wants this woman to make a flight. Whatever reason, he made some problems. We're going back to the gate. They get back to the gate, and on the way back to the gate, I should say, this woman finishes her Amidah, finishes the Shemoneh, and she goes over to the gate agent, and she realizes she missed her flight. She says, can you put me on another flight? Can we change her this? She goes, as a matter of fact, your flight hasn't left yet. There was a problem with the plane. They're coming back to the gate now. So there's a good chance you can get back on. We'll see what happens with the mechanics. They're going to check it out and see what's going on. So the plane comes back to the gate. 2 hours. The mechanic crew is looking through the plane. They come back. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the plane. They sign off. The plane is airworthy, good to go. This woman who was davening Shemoneh gets on the plane. She sits down, and they go and they take off. And mid-flight, one of the stewardesses, a bunch of Israelis, Chilonim, and now irreligious Israeli stewardess, and one of the head stewardess sees, the Rabbi Zaid sitting in the front of Chaim, and he goes over to him, and he says to him, he says, what do you say? Crazy story, right? We had smoke in the cabin, and we get back to the gate 2 hours later of checking, and mechanics come back, clean bill of health, and there's nothing wrong. What do you say to such a story? Crazy, right? So Reb Chaim Zaid says, you know what? I don't sit in Bezdin Shamal. I don't sit in the sky. I don't sit and pretend to think of Hashem's plans. But let me tell you to you from my view. I'll tell you what I saw. So he repeats to him the story. He says, I was in the terminal. I saw this woman davening, and she's standing over there. And the plane left, and perhaps Hashem wanted to make sure she makes her flight and didn't want her to miss her davening. So this Chiloni says, he says to the steward, says to the Reb Chaim, he goes, I don't understand, you're in the middle of davening. Okay, you pause your davening and you get on the plane and you continue davening on the plane. What's the big problem? Why couldn't she stop? So Reb Chaim starts explaining to him the beauty of tefillah, and that when it comes to the Shmoneh Esrei, the Amidah, that there's halachas involved in it, that it says even if a snake wraps around your foot, you're not allowed to stop the Amidah. If the king of a country comes and says hi to you, you're not allowed to respond. You are now davening to the Melech Malchei Amlochim. You cannot stop what you're doing. For nobody, for no reason. And this flight attendant, the steward, is soaking up all this, is loving this information. And Reb Chaim Zahid, he notices that, and he starts capitalizing on it, and he's pushing them the beauty of tefillah and what it means, and that a person can daven 3 times a day, anywhere they are, you just talk to Hashem, there's a beauty involved in it. And towards the end of the flight, it's a short flight, and before the end of the flight, the Reb Chaim Zahid and the flight attendant, they exchange phone numbers, and they say, look, Reb Chaim tells him, he goes, I live in Israel, you live in Israel, anytime you're around, give me a call, we can continue this conversation if you'd like. And Kachavas, a week later, this flight attendant calls him and he says, I want to continue this conversation. Chaim Zahid tells him, you know what? Beautiful. We just finished dimension number 2, right? This is the dimension number 2. Chaim Zahid tells him, so this week we're going to have a big event, a weekend event, a Shabbos event, a Kiruv event. He says, why don't you come by? So the flight attendant tells him, I can't, I'm not from Guy, I'm not going to feel uncomfortable. He goes, no, it's perfect for you because everybody there are irreligious Israelis and we're trying to be mekar of them. You're going to feel perfectly at home. He says, okay. And so he invites him. And it goes on, this flight attendant attends this weekend, and this flight attendant eventually, over the course of a few months, becomes religious. He's loving Judaism. That's dimension number 3. You see the beauty, how a flight, the whole thing, the nace, he sees the nace, and he realizes, and he comes close to Hashem, chazeh b'tshuva, like they say. And so we have a 3rd dimension. Now comes the 4th dimension. A year after this story, Reb Chaim Zahid gets a phone call from the flight attendant. He goes, I have a question for you. He goes, they're reading me the shidduch. And I just wanted to discuss the shidduch with you. Who is this woman? Who is the shidduch? The shidduch is this girl from the terminal. Now let's find out what happened over here. Reb Chaim Zahid finds out the name and realizes who it is. And he sits them down and he wants the full story. And this girl tells Reb Chaim this story. She says, I too come from an irreligious family, and I started becoming from. I had a hard time finding a shidduch. It was very difficult for me to find a shidduch because of my background, being a Baal Tshuva, I was already from. So it was kind of difficult to find this unique situation. And so I promised Hashem that no matter what, for the next 30 days or so, I'm going to daven and shmon. When it comes to Shmoneh Esrei, I don't care what happens. I am not going to deviate. It's me and you, Hashem. That's it. We have a meeting one-on-one. Nobody else can bother us. Nobody else can interrupt that meeting. And that's what I promised Hashem. And so when you, Reb Chaim Zahid, your Gabbai came over and told me that the flight is leaving, it didn't matter to me. I made a promise. My promise to Hashem was that I will uninterrupted continue davening, do my tefillah. In exchange, I ask Hashem to please find me a shidduch. Tell me, guys, 4th dimension. This woman comes full circle to this whole situation over here. What's the big lesson that I'm trying to teach you guys today? We learn Shaar HaBitachon every single day. And we know everything has a purpose. Everything that Hashem does has a reason. And everything that He does is out of love. So when the woman misses a flight, okay, she knows this is part of it. The flight comes back. Why does the flight come back? Because Hashem needs to prove to the flight attendant that there's Hashem. He needs to make him chozeh b'tshuva. Why does he need him to be chozeh b'tshuva? Because at the end of the day, he needs him to marry this woman. This woman needs a shidduch. Everything gets combined. Now, if we think that's the end of the story, that might not either be. We just don't know yet. This might be still in the middle of the story. Everyone has a script. Hashem made a story for everybody. And this whole coming together, this shidduch could be for even a bigger purpose. Maybe something else crazy happens out of this and we can go to a 5th and a 6th and a 10th dimension. We don't know that. But the point that I want to make is that things happen every single day. We might not understand why those things happen. But I want you to understand, and we say this every single day, When you trust in Hashem, when you believe in Hashem, and you know that everything He does is for your benefit, regardless of what it looks like, even though it might seem like you missed your flight, but it could be for a good purpose. It could be for a very, very, very good reason that you missed your flight. And with that, I want to segue into this week's Parsha. One of the beautiful questions that I keep asking, and I ask myself the same thing, because the Hashem went to every single nation and asked them, do you want the Torah? And all they did was, we know. What was the big question that they came back? What does it say? And Hashem told them what it says in the Torah. And they said, oh, this is too hard for me. That's what no, the Torah is not for me. And when they came to the Yidden, what did Hashem say? You want the Torah? And they said, Nasa v'nishma. First, I will do it, and then I'm going to listen to what it has to say. You know that the anti-Semites of the world call the Jews idiots. Why? Because why are you taking on such a big project of becoming a Jew, taking on the Torah, without first looking into why didn't you ask questions? As a matter of fact, it made sense to ask questions. These other goyim, they asked the questions. They asked the right questions. It's not like unheard of. That's if you want to speak Bitachon, it's a shtadlis. You got to do your part. When your best friend comes to you and says, Ali, let's go. We're going somewhere. You don't ask questions. When your best friend, when the love of your life, your wife, whoever that is in your life, that comes to you and says, we're doing this thing, you don't ask questions. Okay, we're going. Pack a bag, we're out the door. Why? Because you know that at the end of the day, this person is not going to ask you to do anything that is not in your best interest. Because they know that what they're doing for you is a favor for you because they love you and you love them. And so when they come to you with an opportunity, a task, a mission, a project, whatever that is, you know that it's for your benefit and it's obviously something good. It's going to be exciting. Hashem loves the Yidden. Hashem came to the Yidden and the Yidden knew if Hashem is asking me to do that, obviously it's something I can handle. Obviously it's something that I want to also do. So by saying to Hashem, I will do it and I'll ask questions later, I'll figure it out, the different rules and regulations, I got that. I'm going to do. You asked me to do it, I'm doing it because I know it's for my interest. We have this every single day. Every single day, we are faced with challenges. Life is not easy, we know that. But one thing we can learn from this, that Hashem never gives us a struggle, a challenge that we can't handle. You know why? Because it's just like when He gave us the Torah. He offered it to us knowing that we can handle that. When you have a struggle, when you have a challenge, when something, so to speak, is not going your way in life, what is it, the bottom line? Hashem is doing that because He knows you can handle it. Never, ever will Hashem put something in front of you that you can't handle. That's not what Hashem does. If it comes your way, it's a challenge that you are capable of doing. It might be difficult, but you got to know that. You got to push forward. You got to understand that that's really what Hashem is there for, because He loves you. He's not giving you any challenge in life that you can't handle. He's giving you challenges that you could overcome, challenges that you could excel, challenges that when you make those things happen, you get that schusim, that schar in Olam Haba at the end of the day. Thank you, everyone, for joining us earlier today. Have a wonderful, a beautiful Shabbos. And as always, I love each and every one of you.